Mary Kais, John T. Stewart, emotional, what's it called? Question. Oh dear, oh goddamn dear. Good morning. Premier Bennett's social credit government delivered its speech from on high, its speech from the throne yesterday. And not to be obnoxious, but it seemed to be an old familiar score, something we've all had before. But to give me his fresh interpretation of it, I've got Eli Sopo, our legislative reporter in Victoria, to give me a quick sum up. Election budget or the same old stuff again?
Oh, it's pretty well the same old stuff again. I call it the teddy bear throne speech. It was warm and cuddly and meant not to be offensive to anybody. They certainly are erasing any liabilities before any kind of an election, so it's certainly a pre-election throne speech, taking care of the economy. They're going to set up a new forestry fund. We've heard about that before. More highway spending, more continued tax breaks for business. We heard that in the last budget. Social areas, more health and higher education spending. We've heard that before. Tougher spouse and child abuse laws. That'll be new, I think. Certainly a new school act. And in the area of labor, preventive mediation program. They certainly want to exude this aura of conciliation, cooperation, and of course you've heard about the compensation stabilization program changes affecting the civil service in British Columbia. And in case you're not convinced they want to be nice to everybody, they're going to bring in some tough conflict of interest laws to make sure the MLAs keep themselves in line.
Oh, goody, 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 goody. Now, on education, is there new money mentioned, or an indication of new money, or is it the Excellence Fund, etc., etc.?
It's the same old etc., Excellence in Education Fund, which seems to be waning by the day. It started off $110 million, and the clock is still ticking on it.
Now, does it look like an exciting speech from the throne, or are you just going to drag your way through it, go to the estimates in the budget by about the middle of next week?
Well, it's sort of like a dance of seven veils. We're going to have about 7 days of throne speech debate here, where slowly it'll become unraveled what this thing really means. It's very cryptic right now. It's very much like marriage vows, you know, something old, something new, something borrowed, and nothing blue at all for the voters out there.
Well, it should be an exciting session, and I know you've arranged for me to have Bob Skelly, the NDP leader, later in the program this morning, immediately after my introductions.
Absolutely. He promises to be great.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Eli. Now, we are going to have some light-hearted stuff on the program this morning because, you know, the secret plan of the government is to turn us all into lottery salesmen, tourist officials, tourist service people, and gamblers, not just lotto. And there's an incredible amount of casinos and live blackjack in downtown Vancouver. And I took a little walkabout one the other night, and I found someone who didn't really want to be identified at blackjack. Roll.
So I want to change the rule, $1 to $25 limit.
You mean now it's only a $5 limit?
Right.
And you want a $25 limit?
That's right.
How much did you win tonight?
I lose really bad.
Okay, I'll ask the government to give you a $25 limit, okay?
Thanks very much.
You forgot to give me your name.
What
a joke. He was not hiding desperately from me, but he certainly didn't want to be seen. Now, despite the Nielsen Task Force report, which shows something like, billions of dollars, what's the figure? $16.4 billion a year in direct grants and lost revenue when it looked at 212 programs, the government still has money for little committees and task force to travel across the country and give us some esoteric advice on things like fitness, which is why here in the office from Hamilton, I think it is, McMaster University, is Dr. Mary Kais, who's going to tell us all about this great Canadian Summit on Fitness. My, we're wonderful at task forces and meetings in Ottawa. But she's going to tell us all about the Summit on Fitness in Ottawa and how unfit we all are, we slobs perhaps on the West Coast. And then in a more emotionally inspiring plane, I'm going to try and help the North Shore Counselling Centre, which has been in business for 15 years, operates on its own nickel and dime, but badly needs help now for its quite extensive services to give people in these times of trouble emotional first aid. That's Dr. John Thomas Stewart. But immediately after the break, we're going to get an interview with Bob Skelly, leader of the NDP, with his version of what the speech from the throne should have been. Mr. Skelly, you'll be responding to the speech from the throne in the House, of course, but perhaps you could give me as blunt a preview as you can of what you would suggest should be done in British Columbia right now by the government in power.
Well, first of all, Jack, I think the government should be more honest with the people of British Columbia as to the state of the economy. It seems that the Premier sees another British Columbia than the one we see or ordinary people see on a day-to-day basis. He doesn't see all the problems of unemployment, the problems of poverty, the problems of regional disparity in the province. He seems to be only able to concentrate on one thing at a time, and that's on the glitz and the glitter around Expo. But unfortunately, a lot of people out there in British Columbia are having an extremely difficult time of it. We would like to see more attention to the problems that the regions of this province are experiencing, problems in the resource industry, problems of high unemployment. I've just come back from Sparwood and Kimberley and Columbia River, and people up there have experienced layoffs recently in the coal mining industry, layoffs at the Sullivan Mine in Kimberley. So people are going through some pretty serious difficulties in the regions of the province, and all of the province's resources, all of its financial resources, all of its employment creation are going on in one small area of Vancouver to create temporary jobs in that area. So we would like to see more reality in this throne speech.
You're not trying to create emotional disparities between the so-called prosperous Lower Mainland and the hard-pressed interior towns. Is that fair game?
We're not attempting to create any emotional disparities. What's happening here is that disparity is being created by the Premier's lack of attention to the interior of the province. And we're a bit concerned about that. We would like to see, if recovery is coming to British Columbia, we would like to see the benefits of that recovery distributed fairly around the province. And the simple fact is that is not being done right now by this Premier.
But when you talk about Sparwood and the coal industry, is there anything anybody can in fact do at the moment except hope that the coal contracts stick together and that the prices perhaps rise? I mean, as an NDP Premier, there's nothing you could do to improve specifically our resource industries right now, is there? Nothing.
One of the things we could be doing is to be backing up people in those communities around the province who need that kind of support. We could be looking at economic diversification in those regions. We could be looking at economic development projects in those regions that would stimulate the local economies.
But there are no quick fixes. No quick fixes.
There are no quick fixes, but there are no fixes at all coming from the BC provincial government, and certainly there's no fixes evident in the current throne speech. Well, what we would like to see is some attention paid by the Premier to the regions of this province that are suffering while the resources are being drained from those regions to support Expo.
If you were in power right now, do you think that you've got money enough, Mr. Skelly, with all the new debt that's been created because of the lack of resource revenue, to, for instance, increase the welfare rates, one of the great cries at the moment?
Jack, the reason that we're in a deficit position now is not because of the problems of the resource industries. The reason for our debt is because there's so many people unemployed around the province, and the government is doing nothing to deal directly with the problem of unemployment. It's not employment that creates deficits, it's unemployment. And this government has to do something to deal with the problem of unemployment.
And how would you deal with unemployment, though, specifically? Would you go into big borrowing for public works at union rates by municipalities? Would you go into a government-funded, government-operated, massive reforestation program? And where would you get the money for it?
Well, as it's been demonstrated in other provinces and in other countries around the world, you don't have to go into massive borrowings to finance those projects. And in fact, those are not deadweight expenditure projects. Those can be considered investments that will return money to the Crown many times over if they're carried out.
But
the problem in British Columbia is there's a lack of investment in our resource industries. We aren't doing sufficient reforestation. We aren't doing sufficient upgrading of our communities so that they can attract industry, attract employment, attract residential development. People are moving away from the province of British Columbia. Look at Mitsubishi just in the last day or so.
They moved their headquarters to Toronto, I noticed.
Mitsubishi said that the growth opportunities in this country have now moved east. People used to consider that the growth opportunities were in the west, but I think Mr. Bennett has killed the goose that laid the golden egg, and now those companies are moving to Toronto and Montreal.
But you must give Mr. Bennett credit for the fact that Expo, ALRT, the Coquihalla, the prospect of the Vancouver gas pipeline, the prospect of building Site C, and the coal extensions at least have given us a fair measure of work. Without his policies, we would have been denied.
Well, some of those things are promises such as the Vancouver Island gas pipeline that have been made for years, at least since about the 1960s, and people are getting tired of the promises. They would like to see some reality. Yes, you're right, Expo has delivered jobs to Vancouver. ALRT has delivered jobs to Vancouver. Coquihalla and Annacis have delivered jobs to the Lower Mainland, but the unemployment rate in those areas is still around 11 or 12%. We've got to see some substantial reductions in unemployment in this province, especially in the outlying regions of this province, before Mr. Bennett can really claim to have brought about any economic recovery at all.
But there's no doubt that Expo will boost our tourism revenues. Oh, by the way, would you like to have seen emergency legislation to prevent the downtown east side evictions, say, done on the last day before you're prorogued?
I would certainly have liked to see some legislation to protect those innocent people from the impact of Expo. If Expo is going to benefit some people in British Columbia, it should benefit all people in British Columbia, and the interests of those particular people should have been protected in legislation.
At least you'll be pleased with the prospect of some clear-cut guidelines, is it, on conflicts of interests?
Well, Mr. Bennett said he would bring down measures to make sure that the public business is conducted in accordance with the highest possible standards. And he said that this legislation would govern all of public officials in the province. But the problem is with his members. And his members have breached the standards of behavior that should have been established in this province. Nothing was done to discipline those members when they got involved in conflicts of interest, so we'll have to see the legislation before we can really compliment Mr. Bennett on what he's doing.
A final question to Mr. Skelly, leader of the NDP. Is it going to be a happy pre-Expo session of the legislature, adjourning nicely in time for the opening, or is it going to be a dogfight?
Well, let me give you an indication. I proposed to Mr. Bennett that we set up a committee to look into regional job creation on the day of the throne speech, and Mr. Bennett rejected that. He rejected the one opportunity that we have in the legislature to get MLAs together, working in a problem-solving way, addressing the real problems of people of BC, and going out and meeting with ordinary British Columbians to find out what their concerns are.
So
he rejected that.
It's going to be a tough session.
It appears so from the first day.
My thanks to Bob Skelly, leader of the opposition in the House of Victoria, and of course leader of the NDP. Thank you, Mr. Skelly.
Thanks, Jack.
I'm going to brighten you up with the new mode of life in British Columbia. Webster playing blackjack in a downtown hotel. How morally reprehensible. On behalf of a collegiate, too, after the break. I get up at 5:30 every morning, and I have no right to be downtown at night. But I had to come down and see what goes on in all this blackjack, Las Vegas rules, and casinos, which have been going on for some time, and I've missed it altogether. And as a chicken gambler, I might risk a buck or two. But, you know, the day might come when we're all either selling lottery tickets or dealing roulette or blackjack. And I'm going up to the Great Canadian Casino, run by Cortland College, to find out what goes on here, how good and profitable the gambling is. Well, Peter, $3 to get in, eh?
That's great.
I'll be back to talk to you later. I've got
Okay,
to get
great.
into the big, heavy gambling. Now, good evening. Good evening, Mr.
Williams,
From
Cortland College.
Cortland College. Dave Williams, are you a teacher?
I'm one of the administrators at the college.
And you're here looking after your big money casino and gambling night.
Well, it's not exactly big money, but we're trying to raise some money for the students, right?
Can't blame me for that. Now, how much are the chips?
They're $5 and $1.
$5 per chip. Would you please go for broke on $21 chips for me?
Okay. 5, 10,
5, 10,
15, 20.
15, 20. What's the limits? What's the limit?
$5 limit.
$5 limit. Thank you very much. Oh my goodness, I'm going to win, quite obviously. 15. Gone. Thank you very much. That's my maximum loss of blackjack, $2. Just a minute. How you doing?
I'm not doing too good right now,
How
Jack.
much are you down tonight?
I wouldn't like to tell you that.
Do you like these casino games?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Good for you.
50, and the dealer has 7, 10, 15, altogether too many.
Oh, good. Want my $2 back again. No. Are you a professional dealer?
No,
Just a volunteer?
and a nervous one right now.
4, big money gambler.
You're going to make up the difference for me?
I'll make up the difference for you. If you believe that, you'll believe anything.
Well, actually, this might be good.
See
Well,
that?
It's good for you.
Good for me.
18, 17,
20.
14.
Too many. Good stuff. Let's see what he does. 8, 12.
Too many.
Too many. That's for me. Would you kindly invest that for me, sir?
Okay, Jack, I'll
And
take care of it.
Give me the profits at the studio in the morning.
Okay, I will, Jack.
Thanks, man.
I'll be there bright and early.
Now, before you start, just give me a minute, will you?
Sure.
Roulette, is this not the most popular gambling game of all in Europe?
In Europe, I'm not sure about, but in Canada, it certainly is.
Certainly is.
Yeah.
And the rules are fairly simple. Explain them very briefly.
Basically, it's the closer you are to your number directly, the more you get paid. Okay.
I can go red or black, I can go odd or even, I can go, what,
You can
35 to 1, 17 to 1, 8 to 1, 5 to 1?
That's exactly right, yeah.
I had a misspent youth at one time. I want to play this hand. Can I get in now? There we are.
Number is 19, red. You're a winner.
I'm a winner again. I'm a winner again. My Protestant upbringing is disappearing very quickly. Try again. Nobody. Lost a lot. Go and cash in. Thanks very much indeed.
You're very welcome.
I started with $20, finished up with $28, and here is Ross McLeod of Great Canadian Casinos. How do you get away with this? I thought gambling was banned under the criminal code except for the card clubs. And I'm not talking about bingo, which I know is covered by the Lotteries Act.
Well, the Lotteries Act covers casino events and covers ticket lotteries and all sorts of stuff. So this has been in the regulations since 1978.
You see, bingo I can understand, because bingo you can count the number of cards that go out and you have an idea of what the revenue is, but nobody knows how much revenue you're going to take in when you're playing blackjack and roulette and money wheels.
Well, that's true, but there's an audit trail that's pretty good, and it's a predictable business.
Right now, how many casino nights are you running in any given period?
About 6 a week.
About 6 a week. And what's the take? How is the take split?
The charity by law must get 35% minimum charitable object.
Right.
Our fee is 35%. It obviously leaves 30% in the middle. That's usually spent on hard costs, hotel, advertising.
2% for the government.
That's, license fee.
Now, are these professional dealers here trained in Las Vegas? Are they Americans or Canadians or
No,
what?
they're Canadians, and they're trained by us, but they volunteer for each charity.
But they're paid volunteers.
They get an honorarium, I suppose.
How much is it? $30 a night?
Yeah, 30.
$30 a night.
And they get their tips if people feel like the winners usually do.
Oh, I'm going to give my tip to Kwantlen College.
That's even better,
tonight, right?
That's even better.
But what's the biggest take you've ever had in a night in casino and blackjack around here?
I think the biggest gross was 19,000. That's remarkable for one night.
What happens though if nobody shows and you've still got all your hard costs and your advertising? The poor old charity, whatever it is, has to kick in your expenses.
No, we guarantee the charity no loss. We also guarantee them 35% minimum. So if the expenses were greater, we'd pay for it.
But the bigger the amount, the bigger your 35%, the bigger their 35%.
Right.
And the expenses run plus 2% for the government run away with the rest. Good. Much obliged.
Okay, Jack.
Ross McLeod, Great Canadian Casinos. I want to go find somebody from Kwantlen College. Did your old man know you're out here gambling tonight?
Yes, he knows it.
How much have you lost tonight?
Oh, about $30.
How much are you going to lose?
I've lost 60, really. That's all.
What's your name?
Helen.
Helen what?
Green.
Helen Green. Best of luck, Helen.
Thank you, Jack.
If you get broke, I'll loan you $1.
Have you got any?
I won money.
You won?
Yeah.
What are you doing winning money?
Because I'm a clever gambler.
Well, show me how you do it and I won't lose so much.
No. Now, where's Tony? Well, there's not much. There's not much demand for service at this particular table with these two professional, hard-nosed Las Vegas-type gamblers behind.
That's right.
The desk. As I recall, sir, you are Tony Wilkins.
That's right.
What do you do in your other job?
This takes most of my time. In my other job, I'm supposed to be running a college.
The principal of?
Kwantlen College.
Now, and this is Bob Listen.
Right.
He's the money man.
You're the money man.
Right.
You're raising money for the college by this demeaning business?
For students.
I'll get back to that in a minute. Why are you in running the casino night caper, Mr. Wilkins?
Because Dave Williams, who's standing behind you, thought it was a good idea that we'd use this method of raising money for scholarships for students. We have students who are coming in many, many instances who are finding it difficult to manage throughout the year. The more scholarships we can give, the more students we can educate.
And you're not the least bit shamefaced about doing it?
I haven't won yet.
No, not you, the college.
There is a question. Yeah, there is a question.
Well, I mean, you can give me a good hard answer. How much money did you make in your first night of a casino?
$3,000.
And this is only your third night?
That's right.
So therefore, morally desirable or not, in 3 nights you could have made $10,000 for your student trust fund.
If we could have done that, we could have then paid the fees of, something like 16, 17 students for a whole year.
Well, that's good. Now, do you find the organization satisfactory? Are you happy with the handling of the money, etc.?
Yes, the money is controlled very closely. The college is involved in all accounts.
You do all accounts?
Somebody from the college is involved in all the money counting, yes.
And you get 35%. Now, the great casino man told me that if nobody showed, they would pick up all They still wouldn't cost you any money.
That's right.
There's no
That's
loss
right.
to the college.
All right, let's see if I can win some money for the college, right? Do you know how to work this machine?
I know how to turn the wheel.
Okay, just tell me, what are the odds?
Well, 12 to 1 if you're on the number. If you put it on the square here, you get 3 to 1 on the...
All right. Let's see how much I win.
You're supposed to use
The red ones.
Well, no, just a minute now. I think you overbet here. I think he's back the whole thing.
No.
Okay.
They've all got
bets.
No more bets.
That's it.
I'm the only one betting.
On television, no more bets. Now you're supposed to watch. You're supposed to watch the money. Oh, we have the
Ace.
spades. Do you have one of them?
I have the ace of spades.
Got one. Well, you got it on the line here, so you got 3 to 1.
Oh, did I not have it right in there?
Come on now. Come on. Now. I don't know about this. There's a winner there.
What's that?
This is my money.
That's your money.
You get 3 to 1.
And what do I get for that?
You get nothing for that one.
Accept that as a donation to the college with thanks.
Well, now that I've lost money, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. My donation to your trust fund.
Well,
Thank you, sir.
The Irish. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Be sure you're in the office early in the morning.
Yes, we'll send you a receipt for this.
You
Thank
too,
you very
Chris.
much. It's not tax deductible.
Mary Keyes, spelled K-E-Y-E-S, but for some strange reason pronounced Dr. Mary Keyes, is director of McMaster School of Physical Education in Hamilton, Ontario, and she's out here on a nice little swing across the country to set up a summit, a Canadian summit on fitness. What does this mean? A bunch of heavily muscled men and women doing a tableau in front of the National Arts Centre?
That might get some attention, wouldn't it? No, we're going to have 200 people come to Ottawa in June to talk about goals and strategies for fitness, to take us into the year 2000.
I'm on the prod this morning, Doctor. Why did you hold it in Ottawa, where they've got all kinds of activities going on? We could have done with the Summit on Fitness here in British Columbia during Expo.
That would be nice. Do you know, though, British Columbia has the best record for fitness in the country. And I think it's probably as a result of the fine weather that you have. But you have 62% of your population who are exercising 3 times a week.
How can you tell me that, said he. He's in a cynical mood this morning. How do you know that 62 out of every 100 Canadians, British Columbians, exercise every week?
There was a study done in 1981, and that's what the results showed. And it's encouraging, I think, that so many in British Columbia are committed to physical activity.
Well, we are a bit diet fatty, I'll tell you that much, but when you say 62% Canadians, what level of exercise is that? A little walk with the dog at night?
No, it means that they're exercising 3 hours a week, and it could be low levels such as walking or gardening or cycling or playing racquetball as you do.
Have we had any of these physical tests? Remember years ago they used to tell us that the Swedes were the only fit people in the world and that we were a bunch of slobs.
That was the best motivational technique that's been used in Canada. Participation used it as a marketing technique to get people physically active. I think it was a put down really for Canadians, but it got us going.
Have we still got participation?
We sure have.
I mean, no, who was it used to dance about in participation?
Russ Kisby's the president of Participation.
And that's a federally government subsidized organization?
It's an arm's length organization which gets about $800,000 a year from the federal government, but it raises about $2 million through private sponsorship.
2 million. Now, it says here, kind of obviously, the least active are older Canadians, the disabled, and the low-income earners. Well, that's obvious, isn't it?
I think that's one of the things that we're going to try to redress at the summit. We're going to talk about strategies for getting people who aren't active, people who, single-parent families, the disabled, the older adult, to become aware that if they became active, the quality of their life might increase.
Very difficult to become active when you're living on a single parent on welfare or minimum income, and you've got 2 kids and you're chasing the old man for the money he hasn't paid you, and you're living in understand. It's kind of difficult unless you put in subsidies, and you can see from all the Nielsen task force that subsidies shortly are going to be down the drain, aren't they?
One of the things that we're going to be looking at is who's going to pay the shot, whether it's going to be private sector, whether it's going to be user pay, whether it's going to be government. And I think that's one of the real mandates of the committee, to find out what the best mix of paying for fitness is going to be.
I can give you the mix right now.
Private sector?
Those who can afford to should do user pay.
Exactly. And those that don't have the funds should be subsidized in some way, either by their employer or by the government, perhaps.
But that goes totally against the philosophy of this free enterprise government, which is going to power the engines of small business. And it's quite obvious that if Nielsen has his way, he'll wipe out about $16.4 billion a year in direct grants to business and industry, won't he?
One of the things that evidently is in the Nielsen task force is the privatization of fitness. And we've got to look at that.
Fitness hasn't been really in the public field, I suppose, since pro-rec or the proper activities at universities and in schools.
Right, right.
But do we have lots of proper programs in schools and universities? At McMaster, for instance, where you're the director of physical education, you'll have everything but a golf team.
We have 38 intercollegiate sports, but we have over 3/4 of our student body participating in intramural activities. And our fitness activities are so popular that we're going early morning, at noon hour, and in the evening to accommodate those that want to be active.
Mary Kynes, I want to be encouraging to you, but you know, do we need a federal government subsidized summit on fitness? You see, you come from prosperous central Canada. 6% unemployment in Toronto. All kinds of money in Hamilton. No unemployment at all. You get all the new plants.
Not
you get
true.
Everything.
Not true. Hamilton has been a depressed area. But let me tell you, one of the reasons I think the minister wanted a summit on fitness was that the rising healthcare costs are about $38 billion in this country. And people feel that if we can increase the level of fitness, that correspondingly we might, and it's a might.
Well,
we might be able to decrease the cost of health care. And if we can keep older people out of hospitals, it'll be less expensive on fitness programs than it will be to keep them in hospitals.
We have trouble keeping old people in minimum accommodation because if they run against Expo, they're out in the street.
Well, that's sad, I think.
Yeah, but you know, do you want a national program like Strength Through Joy? That's before your time, but do you remember Strength Through Joy?
I remember that, sure. And the Australians have Life Be In It, and we have, I think, an excellent fitness program offered by Fitness Canada.
The number of people that go into some of these fitness spas and then the contract doesn't work or they lose their money is quite considerable.
That's another area that we've really got to look at. And when we've been traveling across the country, and there was one entrepreneur in Regina who told us that the government shouldn't be involved, that we should leave it to private entrepreneurs. But the problem is that their fees are so high that the disadvantaged can't afford to join those private.
It applies to a lot of things nowadays out here in Western Canada. Now, what are you doing specifically in Vancouver to whip up your steering committee activities?
We're having 2 days of meetings, but tomorrow evening, Thursday, we're meeting with the fitness community, and that involves people from education, recreation, private sector, healthcare, the government.
Everybody but Jane Fonda.
Jane Fonda won't be here.
Okay, June 8th to 11th in Ottawa, of all places, a Canadian Summit in Fitness. My thanks to Dr. Mary Kynes. And if you just passed a law to stop people smoking and enforced it with a whip or something, or handcuffs, Canada would be fit overnight.
Maybe.
Maybe. My thanks to Mary Kynes. Next, we're going to look at emotional first aid. Physical first aid, now emotional first aid. After the break.
Canada pageant. Pringle, Tanya Williams, and talented contestants.
Watch the telephone.
More coffee? Okay. 1 minute. You seem to enjoy yourself at the casino.
Oh, the casino.
Yeah, that was fun.
Are you selling this book?
Mm-hmm.
How much?
$14.95. It's sold over 1,000 copies since the 1st of August, so it looks like it's going to.
Most of us need emotional first aid at some time or another in our lives, so you wouldn't be human. This is an emotional first aid manual put out by the BC, what is it? Canadian Mental Health Association, BC Division, and the Paraprofessional Associates. Now, here is John Thomas Stewart, the director of the North Shore Counselling Centre. First of all, tell me, is this a practical book for people in trouble to buy, or is this for volunteers?
It's for both, but mainly for the volunteers and for professionals who are doing work outside their field, like doctors who may be counseling and others. And
as a matter of interest, what's it cost?
$14.95.
As a matter of interest, where can you buy it?
Canadian Mental Health Association or the North Shore Counselling Centre are the only places here in the...
And is this going to help you run your presently financially troubled North Shore Counselling Centre?
Not very much. It gives us visibility, as well as it gives visibility to the Canadian Mental Health Association.
All right, let's get to the problems and the work done by the North Shore Counselling Centre. How long have you been running?
15 years, Jack.
15 years. Now, you're not part of United Way.
No, we're not.
Well, what is the North Shore Counselling Centre? What does it do for people? It's in 2100 Block Garden in West Vancouver.
Mm-hmm. It provides marriage counselling, family counselling, therapy for individuals, those three categories mainly, and we also have one person on staff who does divorce mediation in cooperation with lawyers.
At a reasonable price, I trust.
Well, our costs are $50 for an hour of service, but a lot of people have to come in for a lot less than that, and that has to be subsidized.
Because you get into the hands of some divorce mediators downtown, it's going to cost you a fortune, right?
In some cases.
So one good thing about your North Shore Counselling Centre is that you have a qualified person who does divorce mediation on the settlement of the family assets. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Roy Wood, and he always works closely together with lawyers because it's not a legal service.
Now, how have you financed this? You're not United Way.
No, we're not United Way.
How many counselling services would you do, say, in the last given year?
About 3,700 sessions, and that would cover some 800 people.
And not being United Way, do you charge the people?
Yes, we charge the people, and we bring in, last year we brought in about 73% of our total budget of $186,000 from user fees, which is too high.
$186,000 from user fees?
No, 72% of that.
72% of that came from user fees.
Mm-hmm.
So here you are, you're a volunteer, counselling centre on the North Shore. You're charging those who can afford to pay how much?
How much do we charge them?
Yeah.
Anywhere from nothing up to as much as $80 for an hour's service.
If they can afford it, you'll nick them for it.
Well, if you're earning $85,000 and have no dependents, you'll pay $85 for an hour's service.
Now, have you noticed any increase in the stresses or problems or troubles of people that come to you?
For the last 4 or 5 years, a lot. And a lot of people who are having difficulty paying our costs. Mm-hmm. You know, we're getting a lot of executive types who are recently unemployed.
Which is a dreadful blow to the ego in midlife, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
Guy's been making 60 or 70,000 a year, suddenly gets a tiny golden handshake, and he finishes up on welfare, right?
It takes quite a while to recover from that.
Now, you've got professional counsellors.
Mm-hmm.
You are one yourself.
Yes, I'm a pastoral counsellor. I'm sort of like a GP in ministry who went off for 6 years and studied at Boston University. It's just the same as an MD would go off and study psychiatry.
So when you say pastoral counselling, does that mean that the North Shore Counselling Centre has got a basic religious base to it? Pastoral always seems to me kind of to do with the cloth.
Well, the individual counsellors have their own faith and spiritual journey which they have traveled. Because we're serving people from many different denominations and people from no denominations at all, then we do not impose upon them our own values or our own spiritual.
In other words, there is the pastoral element there.
There's a pastoral element there. If someone would invite me to pray with them, I would pray with them.
Now, don't I remember there was a big Vancouver Pastoral Institute? Are you connected with that?
We had an association with them. In fact, when I first came to the area, Murray Thompson, who was their director, gave me a lot of personal support to help get started. They went under 2 years ago. They lost a number of sources of income, including one from the provincial government, and it all came at once, and it was too much for them.
So what do you need to run to handle 3,000 or 4,000 counselling services a year? And by the way, where do you get your referrals?
We get about 38% from doctors in the community and psychiatrists, and then we get them from churches and other organizations. And a lot of people come through friends who have been there. Mm-hmm. You know somebody who's been there, and you will ask them about it, and they will tell you.
When you give them the counselling, apart from the psychological support, do you also give them practical advice?
To a degree, but that's not our basic approach. But somebody coming for short-term help, they would get basic practical advice, or we might refer them to somebody who can consult with them regarding their finances.
Somebody whose family is facing terminal illness, eh?
Yes, we can stay with that. And and people who have, we get a number of families where they have lost a child in death, and we deal with a lot of grief.
Teenage problems?
Teenage problems, a lot, regularly. Some teenager has run away, or families having some difficulty with a teenager, and they tend to focus in on and blame that particular individual when we look at it as a family problem. We try to get the whole family out.
Try to get the family back together again. Alcoholism, of course, I'm sure, is as widespread as it has ever been.
It is, and we have a unique approach, Jack, with dealing with alcoholics.
What's your unique approach? I thought there was only one way, AA.
Well, we involve AA. I will not go beyond the initial assessment with an alcoholic unless that alcoholic will either get into AA, bring their sponsor in for me to meet, or will go to their family doctor and get on antabuse. It's a waste of time to try to work with an alcoholic unless someone else is dealing with that alcohol problem.
Yes, sir, unless the person is making a sincere effort to follow the AA rules and is willing to come to you. What you're telling me is that you can never successfully treat an alcoholic by chasing him around the country.
No, he will use all his alcoholic defenses to work against the kind of therapy we do.
Now, you've got a new fund called the Storehouse Fund. What is that fund?
Well, that fund is an effort to have money coming in, and we'd like to have about $50,000 a year coming in from that without touching the capital. And that will go towards helping these low-income clients, many of them single parents and so on, who need the help, and often they need more than the 1 or 2 sessions we can afford to provide them.
How do you plan to raise this money?
Well, we have a campaign committee working on it, a lot of volunteers from the North Shore. Don Bell, whom you would know of, is chairman of that. Don Lanscale is chairman of the overall committee. And that seems to be going fairly well.
How are you doing?
Well, we're at the organizational stage. So far, we've had about $40,000 come in.
And you're on the program this morning because I feel you're probably worthy of considerable help too. And you're selling the book as an aside to pros and para-pros.
Well, that book is mainly to help those who are attempting to provide help outside of the kind of thing we do.
Do we have an address for the fund to put up? We haven't done it yet. I'll tell you what, I'll promise you. I'll put up the address of the Storehouse Fund, North Shore Counselling Centre, 2104 Gorton, West Vancouver, before the end of the program. And I wish you well in your efforts, because with government services being cut back, people must have a place to turn to. Why are you not in United Way?
We tried several times through the years to get in United Way, and I think partly because it was North Shore, but because North Shore is seen as having a lot of money, and yet 20% of our clients come from Vancouver. But I think that was part of it. Part of it, we had to jump through so many hoops, it didn't seem to be worth the trouble.
And you're going to make another, you're going right now, you've got enough to keep going.
Not to keep everybody coming, those low-income people, as long as we would like. Sometimes we have to see them only...
You've got to give free service to low-income people.
We do. We don't turn anyone away, but sometimes they need more than 8 or 10 sessions. Like recently I had a couple come, Jack, and we provided them with 20 sessions. That cost us $1,000 because they had no money to pay. That soon eats up a budget.
Yeah, it does. And of course, money is not necessarily the root of all evil, but without it, you can't run the North Shore Counselling Centre. I'll put up your logo with your appeal for funds before the end of the program for the Storehouse Fund. And I wish you all the best.
And I appreciate this opportunity.
My pleasure. Just wait there a minute. Free for all after the break. Time we had a long free for all. Might make an observation before I go to the free-for-all. The Nielsen Task Force on Federal Spending, which McDonnell the Auditor General told us years ago was virtually out of control, is going to haunt this country for good and for evil for many years to come. Some of the basic findings are just absolutely shattering. But what I regard as the good news in it is that these studies say that the country's welfare system does not give free rides or need major change. And they point out what many people have suspected for a long while, that it is the tax incentives to business which have been badly and inefficiently administered by governments of all shades and types, mostly liberal, of course. There are 212 programs in the country they looked at, which cost about $16.4 billion in 1 year in direct grants and lost revenues. That's half of the projected budget deficit over which Wilson is biting his nails in the greatest detail. And then these scientific, what did they call them, SRTCs, Scientific Research Tax Credit. That was a great gimmick brought in by the Liberals a couple of years ago, whereby people got tax credits to develop research, but they took the tax credit and they sold it to somebody else, say a 10 million credit, sell it to somebody for $8 million and have $8 million to walk away with. It seems that something like $500 million may have gone through the fingers of the Canadian taxpayer in outright fraud in SRTCs. $500 million in 1 year. Indicates an appalling state of affairs. $500 million is the precise amount of money that our friend Michael Wilson, doing his best, has cut from discretionary spending in the years ahead. So there's $500 million in government services which could have been paid for by $500 million in fraud. And even at that, I'm told that there's another $900 million received by 313 companies that got tax credits but didn't carry out the promised research. We've seen a couple of cases locally whereby Revenue Canada has moved in and seized funds, what's left, to try and get some of the money back because the tax credits may not have been properly used. But it's absolutely staggering. To value of suspected fraud, $500 million. Uncollectible tax owing to research not done, $900 million. That's $1.4 billion. And $16.4 billion in direct grants to industries. And I don't know who we're going to get to analyze this as far as in the greatest detail, but it seems that taxpayers provide up to 90% of the costs of a business venture, partly because many public servants do not understand the way the system works. It's really abominable. But give the Tories credit. Give Eric Nielsen, the hard-faced man whom nobody likes very much, credit. He did his report on federal spending being out of control. And it'll give both the left wing and the right wing considerable ammunition to use against especially the Liberal government, our government of majority control since the end of the Second World War. A lot of hell on it. My goodness gracious me, if only we were efficient. Now, I'm going to go to a free-for-all. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hello, Jack.
Yeah.
I'm an unemployed IBEW Local 213 member here in the cable TV section.
Right.
And I just wanted to relate a information to the public, in particular the subscribers of Shaw Cable TV.
Now, what are you going to tell me?
That Shaw Cable TV is currently on strike. The technical employees have been locked out and are picketing in North Vancouver. And we're asking people not to cross that picket line.
It's a lockout or a strike. Is it? Which is it?
Well, it actually stems from lockout in the Kootenays in Local 1003 that has been going on since August 1985. And Shaw Cable TV is having a particularly arrogant attitude. The main issue is open shop. They're union busting. They're refusing to negotiate.
Well, I'd like to get both sides of the story. I'll talk to a union official about it. But anyway, your message is across. You're one of the striking IBEW men in Shaw Cable. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you were going to drag your show down to the Expo site.
BC TV is going to be broadcasting from the Expo site from day one, and I shall certainly be doing some stuff from there.
Good man.
A matter of fact, I'm presently working at the Expo site, doing a 90-minute walkabout for my final program of this winter season, and I'm sure you'll see lots of me at Expo. It's a magnificent place, but it was raining like hell when we were there yesterday. We had to go
thanks a lot, Jack.
Much obliged.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Webster. How are you?
Fine.
Good. You're looking very well.
Makeup.
I don't believe it. Listen, Jack, just a social comment here concerning the next election and the interim government dealing with things like unemployment, hunger, housing. I think these are the three big issues, and I don't think they're handling it very well.
You're talking about provincial or federal?
Locally, provincial, and nationally federal, of course.
Well, you know, you got to have some sympathy with Bennett. You know, he's certainly not easy to sympathize with, but he didn't scrap the markets for logging and mining. He's not. But my objection is any lack of a feeling of confidence coming from the provincial government. The communication with the public is very poor.
Yes, I agree. Also, I don't think it's totally Mr. Bennett's fault.
No, no.
So that the markets for lumber and minerals are down. Okay, but I think that he should be directing necessary funds for these people who are being evicted at Expo, the people in the food lines, the massive youth unemployment. These are questions which have to be addressed, otherwise I'm afraid that he is not going to be re-elected.
I am all for the expenditure of direct public money for youth employment in Western Canada right now. I don't care if it goes against free enterprise particular systems. I think we should mount a massive tree planting program in this province for as long as we can with as much money as we need, and give people not $4 an hour but $6.50 or $7 an hour to do it. Much obliged, sir. After the break, more Free for All. Go ahead from Duncan, BC.
I just want to make a comment about the $55 a night fee for those secondhand ASCO trailers that they have near the Expo site. I think it's totally outrageous. There's nothing in them but, you know, there's community washrooms, 2 beds with 10 inches between them and some hooks and a mirror. And I just think $55 is way too much, and it's going to put a bad light on the people in BC.
I thought it was a magnificent piece by Mike McCardle. It really was fantastic how you can touch both sides of the trailer at one time, and you have nature outside, and the guy doesn't care. He doesn't want you to have 14 people in the room, but he said, you know, mother and child in one bed.
I know, it's
2
amazing.
babies.
It's just, and for $55 a night, I couldn't believe that. I thought, you know, what are the tourists coming from outside of BC, what are they going to think of us?
Well, if you put 8 people in, it's only $7 each.
Oh, yeah, they can all sleep on the floor.
No, you can sleep standing up. It looked like an army camp, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It was...
I'll tell you this.
Or a logging camp, you know, like up in the back of Beyond's in Hoburg or something.
Oh, no, logging camps would have television sets in every room in the good old days.
Yeah.
Thanks, my dear.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
News Hour does some incredible coverage of these aspects of Expo, which I find fascinating. All I do is go out spending money at blackjack at night. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Is that here?
Yes, sir, that's you.
Oh, yes, about these gambling casinos.
Yeah.
There was a mention in the Sun in one of their reports about these casinos that they have a convenient check cashing service. Was there? They did not elaborate any further, but they did mention that they cash checks such as welfare checks. Is there anything to that?
Well, there's certainly none at the Kwantlen College in the Ramada Inn, I'll tell you that. I think that would be extremely bad. Mind you, if you're going to cash your check and spend it, you can cash it somewhere else, although that makes it easier. It might be interesting to go to one of these places on the night that... No, I'm not going to hound welfare people. No, there was none visible at the one I was at.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead, please.
Morning, sir. I have 2 unrelated questions. The first goes back to a show you had a couple of months ago on dishonest politicians. You were very upset with politicians that have been hoodwinking the public that elected them. And I remember wishing that you would run for office so I could have somebody honest to vote for, and I'd like to know if you've ever considered running for public office.
Yes, I have.
Are you ever going to do it?
No, I won't, and I'll tell you why.
Why is that?
To be an effective politician on the provincial or the federal level, you must accept the tenets of a political party. You must give up your freedom of action. You must vote with the party whip. And you must take the whip, in other words. So I would be like many other kind of outspoken people, would merely become a pain in the side of the parliamentary system as a maverick with no influence.
What about an independent in the city politics?
Independent? Where?
In the city politics, to start with.
Civic politics.
You could be mayor of Vancouver.
Oh, but no, please don't wish that on me. I've had not a bad life at all. I don't want it. Oh, no, I can't imagine anything worse in pure selfishness of sitting there in Harcourt's place dealing with Libby Davis, Bruce Erickson, Fuel.
Okay, you've made your point. I have one other question. I've been more than a little disturbed to see South African tourism advertising on your station. I'd like to know if you know the official station line and what you think about it. And if you don't know the station line, could you find out, please?
No, I don't necessarily find out. The station line is that they obviously find the ads acceptable. I'm totally against apartheid. I'm totally against the gulags. I'm totally against Russian communism. I'm totally against what happens in Zimbabwe from time to time, whether it's by whites or blacks. But I don't know the world is all that. There's a big fuss just now, or was a big fuss down at CIJ, the Centre for Investigative Journalism. In fact, I'm going to talk about it tomorrow, where the CIJ people invited a third-level secretary from the South African consulate to appear on a panel with other reporters, right? And some of the young guys down there say, if they're going to have a South African government official on a panel at the reporters' investigative meeting, we're going to boycott it and picket. That, to me, is stupid. I think you've got to talk, especially people in our business, have got to talk to people and expose them to other people. I am not 1,000%. I believe in no trading with South Africa as a good moral political philosophy. But I don't know that it's that bad to run commercials for...
That's trading with them, too.
I suppose it is. It's not something that gets me too hot up, I must tell you. It's not like you asked me in 1938 what I thought about the Spanish Republic.
Well, they paint a very nice picture of South Africa in those advertisements, and that is not the way it is down there, as you know by reading your newspaper.
True enough. I'll just let me weasel on that one.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, much obliged.
Bye-bye.
I don't feel that part about it. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello.
Yep.
Hello, Jack. Is that me?
Mm-hmm.
Jack, it's ironic. The very first thing you came out with was about welfare. I have a very serious statement to make because I don't understand it. I'm 59 years old. I'm on handicap pension, which is connected with welfare. I do own a car. It's 21 years old now. And I have just undergone a bypass surgery, and I use as high as 2, 3, 4, or 5 taxis a week, which sometimes amounts to close to maybe $100 taxi fare both ways. And the ironic thing about it, if my doctor that I go to, the specialist I go to, writes me a prescription, the taxi driver is not allowed to stop from my doctor's office to that drugstore, which is right by my house, or going by my house. He's not allowed. He has to take me directly from the doctor's office directly to my home, and if I want my prescription, I've got to phone my worker again, get her to order me another cab, take me back down to the drugstore to pick up the prescription and bring me back home. And what I'm complaining mostly about, I've written quite a long letter, and if it's possible, I'd like to send you a copy of it later on, is this, that my gas, all I use my car for, it's marked for pleasure, but all I use my car for is for visits to the doctor, the druggist, and the grocery store, Safeways. Well, I shouldn't have mentioned that, but that's all, the only pleasure, if you want to call it that I get out of my car.
Can you mail the letter to me, and I'll promise to look into it?
Yeah, well, the only other thing I wanted to point out to you was this. They're spending hundreds of dollars, or possibly way in the thousands. I don't know how many there is like me, but what I'm writing a letter about, or trying to convince somebody, and I don't know exactly who to put it towards in the provincial government, is why can't they subsidize me $45 or $50 or $60 a month to me, myself, rather than spend this...
Okay, I get your point. I'll read your letter. Take his number anyway, after the break. We'll put up the address for that North Shore Centre. Oh, it's up now. I was going to say we'll put it up just before the break, but I was wrong. It's up there now. You sure that's the right number? Go ahead, please.
Morning, Jack.
Morning.
Do you have any idea how much the Nielsen report cost? Whether the government, do you think the government will follow through on it?
$3.7 million was the cost of the report.
3.7 million?
I'm sure the Tories will follow through on it. I am
think
sure.
they'll back down when public starts to put a little pressure on, eh?
No, I think the point is that when they follow through in this one, they got to follow through against the corporations. They got to follow through against big business.
I hope they do follow through and stop raising taxes on the average person, start making some of the other businesses and that pay some of this debt off.
I think if it is a real conservative government, it must follow through.
Thank you very much, Jack.
But I don't think the Mulroney is a real conservative. Mulroney's a real survivor.
I'm afraid you're right.
Thank you. Go ahead from the salmon capital of the world, Port Alberni.
Oh, good morning, Mr. Webster.
Morning.
Many of us faithful viewers here from Port Alberni wonder why your program is not repeated in the evening anymore at midnight. It means that many miss it completely, you know, working people, business people, teachers, etc., you know.
Well, I was sorry about that too, but I can't quarrel with that decision. That's a decision made by Channel 6 in Victoria.
Oh, it's a terrible one.
But
we all miss it very much. Like I'm at home, you know, but I'm a handicap, so I generally get up late, and I prefer watching it in the evening.
Well, who knows? There might be a change one of these days, and thank you very much, my dear. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. Next time you have John Turner on, would you kindly ask him what his position was on the logging of the open environment when he was on the board of directors of McMillan Bloedel?
I brought that up with him yesterday.
I'm sure he was for it. Secondly, about this group that wants to put this floating marina into English Bay, and all these environmentalists are worried about the affluent that may spill from it into English Bay. Where were they when the GVRD was pouring millions and millions of gallons last year into the English Bay and Fraser River to clear out their sewer system?
I'm with you all the way on that.
Thirdly, would you ask these bleeding hearts from back east that all of a sudden there are people west of the lakehead, and secondly, there is the barrier of the mountains is not holding them back when they want to come out here and tell us how we have to clean up our environment and stop the logging on Moresby Island, when they should be worried about the acid rain and the cleanup of the Great Lakes. I mean, where are these people all of a sudden coming from? Where have they been for 160 years?
Don't unleash me on that one, because I am so angry about it. I could sit here and scream for the next 15 minutes. My old buddy Pierre Berton, he's in there, you know, wealthy,
they
prosperous,
forget, you see,
all
the
the rest
lakehead
of
is
it.
no longer a barrier.
David,
there are people out there. All of a sudden, they're going to help us.
Nobody gives a damn about the economy of British Columbia. That's what maddens me. There's plenty room for both, multi-use. And when this little man McMillan, or whatever he is, the federal environment minister, says, all they have to do is give me a telephone call and I'll come to talk to them at once. He's full of wind, and we know it, and he knows it.
Stick on him, Jack, and keep it up. Thanks very much.
To get out of TFL 24 is going to cost somebody a bundle of money. And I tell you what, nothing about land claims this morning in the speech from the throne, and I forgot to ask Skelly about it. Control yourself, Webster. You're too old to get hyper. Go ahead, please.
Yes, I would like to know why BC Transit has 50 older flyer trolley buses in storage with no plans to use them for Expo. 13 of those buses were repainted in the new colors. They're not being used. They've got the broken down newer flyers being used. In fact, one of them even broke down on its inaugural run into Burnaby. Do you believe it, Jack?
I believe anything. That's a fair question. There are 50 good flyer buses. Where are they parked? Oak Ridge?
No, they're out at Lougheed Boundary in the old Dominion Bridge lot, and they're perfectly reliable. They don't break down like the newer ones. They work.
13 of new colors?
Yeah, 13 of the 50 at least are painted in the new soak red colors.
That's a fair question. We'll give you the answer to that tomorrow. Why aren't they using them?
Great.
Much obliged.
Thank you.
To give the transit people credit, they do generally answer questions quite quickly. Go ahead, please. Oh, no, nobody here. Yes, I'm glad you called. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Jack.
Good morning.
Just wondering what you think about that throne speech from Victoria on the front page of the Vancouver Sun there. You know, you turn around, the social credit government turns around and screws you for how many years, And then all of a sudden, when it comes time for election or anything, they're ready to make these little concessions for people. Now, the average people turn around and, as far as Expo, not benefiting the average people. Rich are going to get richer. People are on welfare. They can't even afford to go to Expo.
As I said about the speech from the throne this morning, it's an old familiar story. We've had it all before.
Yeah, okay, Jack.
There's nothing vibrant in the speech from the throne. A great disappointment. Nothing at all. Yeah. Go ahead from Kamloops.
Jack, you're reporting on the Mulligan affair in the early 50s?
The which fair?
On the Mulligan affair in the early 50s?
Yeah.
It was real good. It was beautiful. And was there ever a book written on it? And whatever became of the man Mulligan?
Mr. Mulligan is retired, living in British Columbia. There was an excellent article in the current issue of the Vancouver magazine written by a friend of mine by the name of Ben Metcalf. So beg, borrow, or steal. You know, that's that glossy magazine that is delivered to homes?
Yes.
Vancouver magazine. It's the best article I have seen on the Mulligan probe in all the years between. And it's lengthy and it sums it up beautifully. Get a copy.
Thank you, Jack.
Much obliged. That takes me back here a long way. What are you trying to tell me?
Good. He comes into my pub every day, the Dover Arms.
This is your pub? The Dover Arms, or you bought it from that slimy Englishman?
Tommy Hammond.
Glasgow.
Scotsman, yeah.
Should do more free-for-alls. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
I sure enjoyed your fishing program, your sports fishing.
Yes, yes.
And I would like to see some more on of that category on your program. I really enjoyed that.
Well, now, look, what's that? I'm no Lee Strait. I'm no Hal Strait. I'm no Bill Dennett. I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tie a fly if my life depended on it. I only go out and, what is it you call it? I only fish for, I'm a meat fisherman, that's all.
That's all I'm looking at, because that's the exact same thing what I do. I just go out there and have a bit of fun.
I'll try and go out to Alberni against this year, just to annoy Campbell River and try and get a 40-pounder at Alberni. I'll do that for you, for sure. I lie a lot. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
Got two questions.
Yeah.
First of all, you missed the vote this morning. You had a psychiatrist on there, and he might have been able to help you quit smoking.
Not a psychiatrist. Is he a psychiatrist?
Well, he was
I can quit smoking anytime I want to quit smoking.
Okay, let's see you do it then.
Okay, sure.
Okay, and
Bye.
the second question is...
Yeah, go on.
Well, why isn't the federal government prosecuting all these guys that took advantage of the tax credits and
I don't know,
absconded?
but if there's a criminal charge, they should certainly face it. Go ahead from Trail.
Hello.
Yeah.
How come they're selling all the tickets in advance for all the entertainers?
I think they made one mistake, my own opinion. I don't think they should have let people buy them all at once, 8 tickets to each of the favored performances they want. And I think they should have made it 4 tickets per person only. It would have taken more time, but it would have created a lot more happiness and pleasantness about the whole ticket system. Because the scalpers, as we saw last night, are in there with the $920 on the good shows, and they'll make money on the tickets, and that's not the name of the game. I think Expo was wrong to sell the tickets the way they did. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack. That business on that marina out there in Point Grey?
Yeah.
There was a guy on the radio yesterday afternoon who was spearheading the opposition to it. And you ought to have heard him. It was really something to behold.
I think it's a good idea.
Well, he's talking about typhoid epidemic, hepatitis, and all this kind of
You
stuff.
see, the moment you let all these people get away with it and give them all kinds of media, they win. Everybody backs down. I think this guy, Justin Harbord, can win that battle, get his lease from the provincial government, bring up these huge caissons or pontoons from Seattle and stick it out there off English Bay to annoy them.
Well, I hope he does. I hope he makes a buck at it, too, while he's at it.
Yeah. As long as they're holding tanks. You know, and they don't put the little dinghies ashore beside their gorgeous houses. My working class ethic is very strong this morning. Go ahead, please.
Hello, Jack.
Yeah.
Yes, there was another call about the transit. I was just wondering if you realize, being a senior citizen, that BC Transit only accepts pharmacare cards. So out-of-province visitors for Expo aren't going to be able to get the cheaper fare.
Hey, tell me. Pharmacare. God, I hope I haven't lost it.
Oh.
You mean I show that when I got on the bus?
Yes, and you get the senior citizen rate.
I was very annoyed in Britain. I showed that in Britain. They wouldn't give me half fare on the trains. They said I'd have a British old age pension card. I showed my passport and they wouldn't give it to me. So after I belted the guy and walked away, I had to pay full fare.
But there are people that are on Canada Pension that are issued a card, but the BC Transit will not take that card.
Surely they'll ask that question too. Will they take my federal government Health and Welfare Canada old age pension card, not pharmacare? Will they take it? If not, why not? Now,
take that one.
Thanks, much obliged. Your name, please.
Hunky Bill Konyk.
Where did you get the shirt?
Peter Gardy made it for me.
How dare you barge into my studio this morning making excessive and rude and demands?
Well, I'm here to make you an honorary North End Winnipeg citizen.
Like Monty McFarlane.
Steve Juba has given me the rights, and here we are. I'm going to shake hands with you. That's North End Winnipeg style with a ring of Hunky Bill's ham garlic sausage. We brought you a
don't name the brand. You're not here for commercials.
And last but not least, a loaf of rye bread from Winnipeg City Bread.
What do you mean Winnipeg City Bread?
City Bread. When you taste that, that's fantastic bread. I took it out of the freezer.
Yeah.
It's my Ukrainian shopping bag.
What else?
But I'm here to talk about
no racist jokes.
No, I promise. July 10th at the Pacific Coliseum, a bunch of us ex-Manitobans got together and we've rented the Coliseum for a big Manitoba party. We have Howard Pauly coming. We have
Howard Pauly?
Yes.
What a dynamic, great stand-up comic he is.
Well, no, we have somebody to lead him into it and out of it.
Oh, good.
We have the real mayor of mayors, Steve Juba, is coming. Mm-hmm. We have Monty Howell is going to be the master of ceremonies. Festivities start at 4 o'clock and end at midnight. Tickets are $10 each. You can purchase them at any London Drugs this weekend.
$10?
$10. It's
how much for old age pensioners?
At $10. Children under 12 free. We have Burton Cummings. Looks like he'll be coming.
Burton Cummings?
I know you love those.
What's he?
You know what Burton Cummings is? He's a North End Winnipegger from St. John's Tech. But we kicked off the ticket sales last weekend. We sold about...
July the 10th. Where? Coliseum?
Coliseum.
How many people?
13,500.
Hunky Bill organizing it.
That's right, along with Shirley Muir and a bunch of other ex-Winnipeg.
And I am now an honorary citizen of North End of Winnipeg.
North End of Winnipeg. Just eat the bread and the kubasa and the perogies and you'll be okay.
I don't want a break. Transit drivers during Expo will accept any of the provincial ID cards for old age pensions or the one I showed you, federal government health and welfare old age card. So that's a transit off the hook. They will accept other than pharmacare if it's a proper ID from a province or the federal government. So that's something. Tomorrow we're going to have a guy who's never been on the program before. He used to have a beard, doesn't have one now. Jim Fulton, NDP MP for Skinner on the Wilderness Report. And we're going to talk about the CIJ at 9 a.m. precisely.
Expo 86, 51 days to go.
Jim Fulton, MP from Skinner on Lyle Island at 9 a.m. precisely. The struggle for some logging jobs in British Columbia goes on, and I'll be discussing Lyle Island with Jim Fulton, NDP Skinner, 9 a.m. precisely. Funny how I have to, oh.